Welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. Glad you could join me this morning. We're looking at the themes of Advent, and this week we're looking at the theme of joy. And I'm looking at joy more from Paul and more from one of his letters to the Philippians. It is an interesting book. The theme of the book is joy. He begins in verse 3 of Philippians chapter 1 by saying, I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. Paul's writing the Philippians. He says, when I pray for you, it gives me joy. There's a sense of joy that comes over me. And the Philippians were one of his favorite congregations. Not so with others. I mean, with other people he prays and he's got tears and heartache and things. But with his prayers for the Philippians, it's with joy. In chapter 4, he says, in verse 4, chapter 4, verse 4, he says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice, which is the root, same root for joy. Paul is emphasizing joy all throughout the book of Philippians. And it is a beautiful book. But it's even more interesting that Paul's emphasizing joy knowing what his circumstances are. First of all, Paul's in jail. Most scholars think that Paul was in jail in Rome, though there are others who think he might have been in Ephesus. N.T. Wright, I think one of the greatest New Testament scholars in the world today, believes he was in jail in Ephesus. I had a New Testament professor, or a professor in Southwestern, who felt like it was Ephesus, but most think he's in Rome. But either way, he's in jail. And he's chained to a Roman guard every day, a Praetorian guard, the royal guard. And besides that, it appears that he has run short on supplies. And he, for a time, was hungry. Now, the Roman jail system was a little different. You had to supply your food, you had to supply your stuff. You didn't get it. And apparently he had run short and was hungry for a while. And then they sent a guy, the Philippian church sent a guy by the name of Epaphroditus to bring the stuff and then to minister to Paul while he was in jail. But while he was there, he got sick and almost died. And so Paul had to take care of him rather than Epaphroditus taking care of him. And so that was a problem that was there. Besides all that, there was a group of those that were preaching. They were preaching the gospel according to Paul, but part of their sermon is how horrible Paul was and what a terrible person Paul was, what a terrible preacher he was. And can you imagine being in jail for the gospel and having people preaching against you and trying to besmirch your character? And I'll be honest with you, I've had people besmirch my character in the past, and it never feels good to have that done. So while he's in jail, they're pouring that on. Beyond that, Paul could be killed. If Nero was the emperor, and many people think he was, or whoever was in Ephesus was coming around, it was not unusual for them to come around and just say, okay, I want that prisoner killed, that prisoner killed, that prisoner killed. And Paul could have easily been killed while there, and he had that great section in Philippians where he said, I've had to kind of come to grips with this, and he says, I've thought about it. He says, I would like to stay. I would like to continue ministry. I don't think my ministry's over. But I've also realized that to die is gain. In other words, we're actually better off if we die. And he'd come to that conclusion. And so quite a deal, all the things he's going through, and at the same time, having a theme of joy. And that's the one beautiful thing about joy. Joy comes from God, and joy does not leave in bad times. No matter what you're going through, you can have joy in your life. I've noticed that the local Christian radio station has a thing called Choose Joy. And I probably would say it more experienced joy. Just because when you get in the presence of God, joy happens. Joy comes in the form of a person, Jesus. And but it is an indescribable thing, and it doesn't go away in bad times. That's the thing about happiness. Happiness is based, the root word of that is hap, which means chance. It's a Latin word. And so there's a chance you could be happy. If all the circumstances, everything goes right in your life, hey, that makes me happy. But if they go badly, you're unhappy. And same way with pleasure. If you're doing the things that give you pleasure, then okay, great. But if not, then the pleasure isn't there. But joy is something that never leaves, even in the bad times. So this Christmas, if you're having one of those hard Christmases, and I know that I speak with people who've lost loved ones or had difficulties throughout the year, and Christmas sometimes can be kind of a sad time, understand that you can receive joy even in the midst of pain, even in the midst of bad things happening to you. You can still have joy. I pray that you'll have that joy today. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow as we conclude our thoughts on joy. Bye now.